The conflict between Georgia and its neighbor Russia appears to be escalating. According to the latest reports, Russian planes bombarded a military target in the suburbs of the Georgian capital Tbilisi earlier today. Russia has also apparently sunk a Georgian naval vessel after it attacked Russian ships. Moscow claims that Georgian forces have withdrawn from the South Ossetian capital Tskhinvali, leaving Russian peacekeepers in control of most of the city. Russian troops and tanks took control of Tskhinvali on Sunday and continued to attack the Georgian city of Gori. Moscow says 2,000 civilians have been killed or made homeless in the ongoing battles. The conflict erupted on Thursday when Georgia sent forces into South Ossetia, a small pro-Russian province which rejected Georgian rule in the 1990s. In response, Russia, which has granted passports to most residents there and had provided support to the separatists, responded by pouring troops and tanks to drive back the Georgians. U.S. President George W. Bush said he told Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin that the violence in Georgia is unacceptable, while a spokeswoman for his Vice President, Dick Cheney, said Washington has expressed solidarity with Georgia and warned Russia against continued aggression over the South Ossetian conflict. We spoke with Channel News Asia's Daniel Renches, and he tells us what the U.S. is likely to do about this conflict.
The US has used its voice at the UN Security Council today in an emergency session in, some might say, a bitter exchange between the Russians and the US, not seen, say, since the Iraq War or since the Cold War. There's some very bitter exchanges indeed in which the US ambassador to the UN, Zalmay Khalilzad, accused the Russians of wanting to implement regime change in Georgia. The Russians say this is not the kind of language that they're used to, and they go back and say, well, look at what the US is doing in places like Iraq and in Afghanistan and other Caucasus states. So we're in a situation here where the US is saying, Russia, back down, you are basically going into Georgian territory. We want you to stand by a ceasefire declaration that the Georgians have now said that they're in. The Georgians have come out of South Ossetia, the area of concern. The troops are out of there, but the Russians are continuing to push forward with their military action. So we're in a very tense standoff situation at the moment, which diplomats are going to find very hard to resolve in the next few days.
Besides the U.S., which has condemned what it calls Russia's disproportionate and dangerous military action, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown has urged Georgia and Russia to agree to an immediate ceasefire. French President Nicolas Sarkozy, whose country is the current EU president, also plans to travel to Russia later this week as part of international efforts to end the fighting. France has already sent its foreign minister, Bernard Kouchner, who has arrived in Tbilisi.
We cannot, as European Union presidency, we cannot accept at our doors, just very close from Europe, to accept such a middle-aged battle. Impossible. So that's why with the 26 other nations we are offering help and political involvement in the name of neighbors.
In the meantime, the United Nations Security Council has begun talks to try to resolve the situation. It met on Sunday for the fourth time in as many days. Georgia, a U.S. ally, has offered a ceasefire and peace talks, accusing Russia of indiscriminate aerial bombardments. Russia has declared it wants to make peace with Georgia, but Moscow has demanded an unconditional pullout. Pope Benedict has also called for an immediate end to hostilities in South Ossetia. Speaking to a crowd in an Italian town where he has spent a two-week vacation, the Pope urged all sides to refrain confrontations and retaliations and start off negotiations to reach a peaceful solution.
Dei tragici avvenimenti che si stanno verificando in Georgia, sempre più drammatiche.
In the meantime, thousands rallied in the Georgian capital Tbilisi to protest Russia's bombardment of the country. And in New York, hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside the United Nations in support of Georgia. A similar gathering took place outside the Russian embassy in Paris. There was a similar gathering by Russian supporters. Youth activists rallied in front of the Georgian embassy in Moscow to protest against what they considered a Georgian invasion of South Ossetia.